Alrighty guys, it's Amit and welcome back to DevDreamer. So guys, in this lesson then, as we continue our HTML series, we now come on to looking at HTML forms. Now forms are really important to have on websites because they can actually be used to do multiple things. So for example, we can have a form that enables our user to sign up and start using our services. We can have a form that helps them to actually log in. We can use a form on an e-commerce site. So for example, if you're looking at building an e-commerce site, we can use a form to have the user input their billing address or shipping address. We can even use forms to have the user interact with you and actually send you an email or send you a message. So as you can see, forms are really important when it comes to building sites. And in these next couple of lessons, we're going to be going over pretty much everything you need to know when it comes to HTML forms. So the first thing we're going to look at then in this video is the HTML form inputs. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so to create our form in HTML, we use the form tag. Okay, so we just say form, and then inside here then we can start putting our input fields. Now you notice here that brackets has come up with the attribute of action, suggested attribute here of action. Action is basically used for backend scripting, and essentially what it means is when the user inputs all the information to our form, hits the submit button, where do you want to actually send all that information? And that would actually be sent to whatever we have in here. So we can have action.php. Okay, and then when the user hits the submit button, all the information is taken to or sent to action.php, and then there'll be a script on there saying how we actually want to use that information. Okay, and the other one that you'll see here, other attribute, is basically method, which is get and post, which is how we actually want to send this information. Do we want to send it with the get method or the post method? And very quickly, what they basically mean, get basically gets all the information and puts it into the URL, and then with post, it actually packages all that information up and then sends it, hence the name post, to action.php. That's basically the difference. But we'll look at all this in a lot more detail when we come on to looking at PHP and backend scripting. For now, I'm just going to get rid of them because they're not really useful in this tutorial. Okay, so then let's begin. We're going to start then by looking at our first input type, which is input type of text. So the way we do it, we do input, okay, and then we have an attribute of type which equals text, okay, and there's obviously different types as well, and we'll look at those as we go through this video. Now, also another thing to note about the input type, the input element here, is that it is self-enclosing. So we don't actually need a closing input here, like this. We wouldn't need this. This would actually be incorrect, okay? It's just a self-enclosing tag. So as you can see then, on our browser, we've actually rendered out a text box. We can click on this and we can actually start typing stuff in, okay? Now the input type of text is really useful because it can be used for things such as name, last name, username. So basically any sort of plain text that you want to capture can be captured with the input type of text. Now there are some other attributes as well that go along with the input type text, and let's just look at a few of them now. So we can actually specify a value. So we can say value, and let's just say Woody. Okay, so now when we refresh, this already has a value in here of Woody. Of course, we can get rid of that. This is basically just to put some default value into there. We can also have placeholders, and what placeholders basically do is gives more information about this text box in terms of what the person needs to input. So for example, here we can say enter your name, save, hit refresh. Okay, we've got Woody there, which is the value, the default value we put in there. If we get rid of this, then it says enter your name. Of course, we could just get rid of this altogether and just have enter your name there, like that. Okay. What other attributes can we add here? We can do size. Okay, so we can just do size. And this basically specifies how big we want this input field to be. So for example, if I said size 1, you can see it's gone quite small. Or I could say size 50 and it's gone bigger. Okay, that's basically what size is. We can specify a max length for our input field. So we can say max length equals, let's just say 5. Okay, so now when I come into this text field here and I start typing, I can only type in a maximum of 5 letters. Okay, we can also specify that this is actually disabled altogether. So we can just say disabled, refresh. So now I'm trying to click onto it and it doesn't work. We can also specify that this is auto-focused when the page reloads. So auto-focus. And then let's hit refresh. Now you can see automatically when the page reloads, this text field here is automatically focused. So that's the input type of text. The next one we're going to look at is input type of submit. So we'll do input type equals submit. Now this is basically used to submit the information on our form. There is another input type of button, but that isn't used to submit form information. That's basically used for things such as JavaScript and Ajax calls and stuff like that. But when we want to submit information in a form, we must use the input type of submit. Now notice here that by default, it's given us a text on our button of submit. We can change that by just doing value equals, I don't know, let's just say sign up. Okay, and now we have sign up on our button. Now, of course, at the moment it doesn't do anything because we're not actually submitting this anywhere. We're actually just submitting it to the same page. But you notice when I click that, this little question mark appeared here. That's because by default, this is running a get method. Okay, so for example, if we came into here, into our input type of text, and we gave this a name, okay, and we said name equals, let's just say name, okay, and then here I said Woody, and then I clicked on the submit button. In our URL here, it's going to say name equals Woody, okay? And this name attribute here, again, is used for backend scripting. It's basically used to identify the values of different input fields. Okay, so that's input type of text and input type submit. I'm actually going to throw a horizontal line over here, okay, just so we can separate our button from the rest of our input fields. And what I'm also going to do is, just to save time, I'm just going to copy this so it'd be easier to type out. Okay, so that's input type text and submit. Next one we're going to look at is input type of checkbox. Okay, so here we can just type in checkbox, and then what that does is it gives us a checkbox here, okay, that we can check and uncheck. Now, some more attributes for this: we can have checked to have it automatically checked when the page reloads. So let's reload this. As you can see, it's automatically checked, and of course with this as well, we can specify disabled, refresh, so that the user can't click it. Okay. So these are basically known as global attributes that can be used on most input elements. Okay, so let's just keep this as checked. That's fine. Now before we move on, what I want to do is I actually want to give these some labels. Okay, so let's go up to here and say label. Okay, and then here let's call this text, and just copy this. Come down to here and give this a label of checkbox. Okay, now here we have an attribute of for, and this basically means what input field do you want to link this label to. So here, if I said input, for, let's say our text field, okay, what we do now is in input here, we'll just do ID equals our text field, and this is case sensitive. So if we did a capital O, this wouldn't be linked. And what I mean by linked is basically this. So if we go here, hit refresh, let's just get rid of this autofocus. I'm just going to get rid of this checked as well on here. Okay, so now when I click on this text label here, it actually selects our input field. Okay, so if we actually had ID of our text field on the checkbox, so right here, save. Now if I click on text, it's going to check and uncheck our checkbox. Okay, so that's what this for attribute is used for here. Okay, let's just get rid of it for now, because again, I don't want this to confuse you. Let's just keep it nice and simple. We're just using our labels just to actually label our different input fields. Okay, so that's input type text and checkbox. Let's take a look at the next one. I'm just going to copy this. Okay, the next one we're going to look at then is button. Okay, so button is basically used for things such as click events for JavaScript. So it's not the same as the submit button. Again, the submit button is the one that we want to use to actually submit our form. But again, here we have button. Let's get rid of these. Okay, of course, doesn't look like much of a button at the moment. But let's give this a value. So we can say value, and we can just say click me. Okay, so now we have a button that says click me. Of course, it doesn't do anything. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Next one we're going to look at is the color input type. So here we'll say color, and we'll just say type of this is going to be color. And this is basically used to select a color. So we can click on here now and we can actually choose a color. Okay. And again, if we were to give this a name, so if I said name is my fave color. Okay, and now we can go into here and we can just pick a color and hit our button, and now up here it says my fave color equals %23, which is basically a hashtag. So it's hashtag and then the color code. Okay, so if we were to let's just take this here, copy, let's go here and let's just say hashtag and put this in. Okay, and it comes up with that same color that we chose. Okay, it's obviously gone now, but That's basically what that does. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Save, refresh. Okay, next one we're going to look at is called the input type of date. And this basically brings up a calendar where we can select a date. Okay, so here we can either specify it like this. Okay, and just say not the year 1201, but the year 2018. Okay, specify a month in here as well. Or we can simply click on here and it comes up with this calendar here. We can flick through and we can choose a date. You can click on this here to actually bring up today's date, which is the 23rd of February 2018. Okay, that's the date one. Let's look at another one here. Next one we're going to look at is email. And of course this is used to input the user's email. Now the cool thing with this is with HTML5, it actually provides some form validation up front. So here, if I click on sign up, sorry, if I come to here and I just type something in, click on sign up, it's going to say please include an @ So we do that. It says please include something else after the @ So this basically provides us with some form validation up front. Now ultimately, we don't want to be using HTML to validate our form. We want to be using PHP or another backend scripting language to actually validate all the information we input into our form here. But it is nice that HTML gives us some front-end form validation. Okay, so that's email. Let's take a look at another one. Next one we're going to look at is the input type of file. Now this is really cool because it actually enables a user to upload a file. So here they can click on choose file. Okay, and it comes up with the window here so they can actually choose the file. Now, by default, it's just going to be any file, but you can specify certain files. So let's just say we only want to have certain types. Well, here we can say attribute of accept, and let's just go for PDF. Okay, so now if I click on choose file, okay, all these are actually going to be disabled because we can't actually use PDF files there. Okay, if we go into here, look at our other images, we just got this logo and the Toy Story image, and again, they're not PDF files, so we can't actually choose these. If we were to say, we can say image /PNG, okay, and now if we click on this, yeah, you can see these are disabled because they're not PNG files, but this is, so we can use that, and this is because it's a PNG file, but this isn't because it's a JPEG file. Okay, so that's the file input field there. Let's now look at another one. Next one we're going to look at is the input type of image. And what this basically does is it allows us to specify an image to be used as the submit button. So here we have our submit button here, which says sign up. But here we have an image and then submit. So we can use this type of image to actually specify an image as the sign up button. So here we can just say source equals submit.png. Obviously that's quite big, so we'll just do width 100 pixels. Okay, so basically now this button now will be used to actually submit the actual form. Now I don't know why you'd want to use this, especially when you can actually use CSS to create some really cool buttons and animations and stuff. So personally I would steer clear of this, but there you go, it's an option that you do have. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. The next one is the type of month. So let's go in here, type in month, and input type is month. Now this is similar to the input type of date. However, with this we can just specify the month and the year, so we can't actually specify a date in here. So if I choose, for example, this, it's just going to say February 2018. Okay, let's look at another input field. This one's going to be the number field, so change this to number and change this to number. Now before we go on, actually let me just quickly specify something here, guys. The reason why this is actually being, if you're following along and you find that your fields have a different layout here, the reason why mine are being laid out like this is because in our style sheet here, I've just specified input type. So choosing input and we're saying display block. So by default, these are display inline, which is why they'll be rendering next to each other. But with display block, we actually display them all on a separate line here. And I've just given a margin of bottom 30 pixels underneath each one. That's why they're being laid out like this. That's just in case you were following along and you're wondering why yours isn't doing the same thing. So you can go ahead and copy those styles. Let's continue. So input type of number. So number basically allows us to, choose a number. So in here, we can just say, type a number in, or we can actually use these arrows here to go up and down. Okay. And you can actually go below 0 as well to do minus numbers. Now in here then, we can actually specify some other attributes. We can give it a min, of 0, and we can say max of, let's say 100. Okay, so let's save that. Let's see what that does. So now if I try typing in, let's just do these arrows. Let's go all the way up to 100 and let's see what happens when we get past 100. See if it allows us to continue. And here you can see it doesn't. Okay, and also with 0, if we try to go underneath 0 or below 0 rather, yeah, that doesn't work either because we have specified a minimum value here of 0, min and max. Now you can also specify the attribute of step here, and this basically says how do you want these numbers to be incremented when you use the arrow buttons. So here if we just said 5, so these will now go up in increments of 5, okay, like so. Okay, so again, that's quite handy to have on a form. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at is the input type of password. Now again, along with the text input type, this is going to be one of your most used fields, of course, especially if you're looking at building sign up and login forms. So here just the input type of password. And the really cool thing with this is that when you actually type into here, it automatically brings up these password protected circles here. So the browser recognizes that this is a password field. Now just going back to our different methods we have on our form, by default this is set to a method of get. Okay, so when we type in a password into here, it's actually going to show that password in the URL. Now of course you don't want to do that, so whenever you're using a password field in forms, you want to make sure you're using the post method to actually hide that password. So for example here, if I typed in a password and I said this, okay, and then I hit the button. Oh, we need to give it a name first, sorry. So here, let's just say name is PWD, short for password. Save, let's come into here now, and now let's type in our password and hit the button. Now up here in the URL, it says PWD equals test123, which is what I put into the password field there. Okay, so this is really important when building forms, and of course we'll look at this when we look at our PHP tutorial, but when building forms and if we have a sensitive information such as passwords or credit card information, we do not want to use the get method. Okay, so let's continue with the next one. Be up here. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is radio. Okay, the type of radio basically brings up radio buttons. Okay, radio buttons are similar to checkboxes. However, with radio buttons, the user is allowed to select only one of a number of limited options. So in here, we can say input type radio, and we can say name, we'll say Toy Story. Now, because we've set this to display block, our text for this radio button is actually going to go underneath. We actually want this to be on the side. So here, just for this input type here, I'm just going to say style equals display inline, and then we want to say, let's just do a span here, and let's just say Woody, and then in here we'll specify value of Woody. Okay, so basically if the user selects this radio button, then they're choosing the value of Woody. So let's just copy this and create another one down here. That's all going to be fine. That's going to be the same. Display of inline, that's fine as well. Let's just move this up. But this one is going to be Buzz. And again, the name here we can change to Buzz. Okay. So you can see here we have two different options here, but the user can only select one or the other. Okay. So either can select Buzz or Woody. As you can see, they can't select both. Okay. So that's radio buttons. The next one we're going to look at is the range input. Okay, let's do input type of range. Get rid of this. Input type of range, and this basically brings up this slider here, and this indicates a range of numbers. So again, here we can say min equals 0. We can say max equals 10 this time, and we can give this a name of range. Now let me just specify something here, guys. Whenever we use attribute of name on any of these input types here, remember name is used specifically to identify these different input types, and it's used for backend scripting. So when the user submits this information, each of these input types will have a value which will be tailored to the actual name here. So for example, range will have a value, So input type, sorry, range will have a name of range and then a value. Our password type here would have a name of pwd and then equals whatever the value of this password is. So for example, we have test123, just like here, pwd equals test123. So here with range now, we have name equals range. Okay, so let's actually put this down back to 0. Okay, so that's 0, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now you're thinking, well, why doesn't it show up here? It didn't show up here because by default, this is how it is. We can actually use JavaScript to actually show the value underneath here as we're actually scrolling. But essentially this, I think, was 5. Let's just hit sign up and see. Yep, so we got range equals 5. It's also pulled in our Toy Story name here, which is from the radio buttons here. We chose Woody. That's why it says Toy Story equals Woody. Okay, so that's the range input type. Let's take a look at another one. I'm just going to copy this here. Take a look at another one. And this one is basically going to be the reset button. And it does exactly what you're thinking. This is actually going to reset all our information that we've put in. So do type reset. Okay, and we get a button that says reset. So here then we can actually say, let's go up. Let's actually fill this in. So let's say Woody. Let's check the checkbox. Let's input a date here. Let's just go for anything. Email. Let's just say john@email.com. Let's choose a file. Let's just choose this one here. Let's choose a month, a number, and that will do for now. Let's just do this as well. Okay. Now we've input all our information. If we were to click on reset now, let's see what happens. All that information has been cleared. Okay, so that's basically what the reset button is for. Okay, it's used to actually clear information in our form. Let's take a look at the next one, which is input type of search. And as you guessed, this is basically used to create a search box. Okay, so the user can come in here, type their search query in, and then hit a search button here. Okay, so that's search. And this is basically the way that we will set this up is by using something called JavaScript. But again, beyond the scope of this tutorial, but we'll look at JavaScript in another series. The next one we're going to look at is the input type of tel, and tel is basically short for telephone. So let's go in here, change the input type of tel. Okay, so these can come in here and they can put their telephone number in here. Okay guys, so that basically wraps up all the different input types of our form. Hope this was useful. I know this is a lot to go through, so if it is confusing, do just go back over the video again and watch it again. And I do believe that this video is quite lengthy, so a quick tip to watch tutorials a lot quicker is to actually watch them in twice the speed. You can actually learn things twice as fast. Okay guys, so I hope that was useful. If you found it useful, please hit me up with a like and a subscribe. And I'll see you on the next lesson where we'll be continuing our tutorials on HTML forms and we'll start looking at other things such as drop-down lists and text areas. It's going to be super cool, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.